Joe from Pretoria. Is everything all right? People talk or say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't like what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
Brown-haired albino was unbuttoning his coat, his eyes on Cermak, who was shaking hands with Roosevelt.
Well, it's wonderful to see you, Tony. A lovely gesture.
I just wanted to remind you and your administration that you have my full and enthusiastic support.
The albino assassin was reaching under his coat, but I grabbed his arm and pulled it away, and his hand came back empty, the gun still under his arm as his coat flapped. I buried a fist in his belly and doubled him over. And when he came up, the snout of my 9mm stared him in the face.
You got you this time, fucker!
Sounded like firecrackers, and the muzzle flash above the crowd looked like fireworks, but this was something else. Blurred figures in the crowd were falling, and a stubby, bushy-haired brown little man in a white shirt standing up on a bench was swarmed like a come-to-Jesus meeting got out of hand. Meanwhile, the ex-blonde was pulling away, and I swung at him, and he went down, unconscious, as the mass of people around us were heading to my right. I moved against the tide towards Cermak, pushing, shoving, and got to that touring car where Miller and Lang were crouched over the fallen Cermak, red spreading from his left side under his unbuttoned suit coat.
Where? Where were the goddamn bodyguards?
I had the blonde, Your Honor. He didn't fire the round. Some bushy-haired little creep.
This was no time to tell him he'd been shot by his son-in-law's gardener.
What the hell? They got me after all, Heller.
The crowd was turning into a mob. Miller, Lang, and I were hovering over Cermak in the quiet of the storm.
Heller, get your people out of the way. We need to move the president and his vehicle out of here. For Christ's sakes, Cermak's been shot. Take him with you. Get him to a hospital.
Roosevelt, sitting in back, heard me.
Put Tony in here and get us the hell out.
The shooter's big revolver was clicking on an empty chamber now. But that must have had an 8-round rod, as I found myself on a battlefield where bleeding audience members wandered like wounded warriors, helped by their dazed loved ones.
Wow, I really hate when my show gets interrupted by YouTube. I really hate it. Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and of course the perhaps never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, moi, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm of course Rob casting at you right here from the Rob Observatory, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 1052. Sorry about that. I really don't know if the powers that be are trying to thwart me. People are calling in, telling Google they don't like me. Well, I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. Hopefully, with that little snafu, I won't have another. I set up these shows, try and make them good for you. Trying to give it some production value, of course, promoting our film White Devils that I'm a producer on, that I'm trying to organize, get this, a worldwide internet premiere for the film. Working on that. Wanted to do it next month. Don't know if I'll be ready to do it next month. A lot of logistics to figure out. And of course, it isn't going to be free. It's going to be like $9. Because if you're good at something, you can't give it away for free. And we made a movie. And it'd be the first time anybody can see it. So White Devils is coming. I'm a producer on that. I'm also in it briefly. I did a second unit shoot where I stand in. I was at a special effects facility for an entire day getting whipped. Not because it's a thing I wanted to do, it's a thing I needed to do. Also, True Noir, if you want to pick up all 10 episodes of True Noir, it's available at truenoir.co. That's a great taste of what it is, what it's like. I tried to make a movie with audio. And that's what I think we did. I'm really, really proud of it. We have an all-star cast, obviously. Michael Rosenbaum is our lead. Michael plays Nathan Heller. It was written by Mystery Writers of America Grandmaster Max Allan Collins. He wrote all 10 scripts. He, of course, wrote the graphic novel that the movie Road to Perdition was based on. And, you know, for all the mad shit I talk about, the failings of what I believe is other people's work, I'm happy to put my own work out there to stand right next to theirs to be criticized. So when some people say, well, Rob, how can you criticize people? Well, I criticize people that should do better, especially when they have all the resources in the world. Anyway, before I start this show, I wanted to take you all back to 1980. Let's go back 45 years ago, and let's look at controversial Gene commercials from 1980 and 81.
I wonder if it's a person. C-A-L. Verb, to undergo a miraculous transformation. From the Greek kalos, beautiful. That's the cow. And from the Latin vincere, to conquer. That's the vin. Calvin, beautiful conqueror. So that's what happened to me. I've been Calvinized.
Tops and jeans, like Calvin Klein.
I've always thought beauty must be as isolating as genius. When people look at you, they're so dazzled you must never know if they actually see you, the deep and complicated person you really are. I felt that about you instantly.
My mother warned me about boys like you. Mama said he's only interested in my Calvins.
Calvin Klein jeans.
Alf, I'm gonna split my Calvins!
Calvin Klein jeans.
You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing.
Calvin Klein jeans.
And as the morning mists had risen long ago when I left the forge, so the evening mists were rising now, and in all the broad expanse of tranquil light they showed to me. I saw no shadow of another parting from her. Reading is to the mind what Calvins are to the body.
Calvin Klein jeans.
What Calvins are to the body.
Calvin Klein jeans.
I sure was. Alf, I'm gonna split my Calvins.
Calvin Klein jeans.
Plus, move it over. 3, whatever, okay. 38, 39, 40, 41, 97. 97 minus 30, 41, 6, 5, 50, 56. Whenever I get some money, I buy Calvins. And if there's any left, I pay the rent.
Calvin Klein jeans.
Two kinds of people who wear Calvins. Those who want to remember, and those who want to forget.
Calvin Klein jeans.
I sure was. Alf, I'm gonna split my Calvins.
Calvin Klein jeans.
I don't care who wears the pants in the family, just so long as I wear the Calvins.
Calvin Klein jeans.
Deep and complicated person you really are. I felt that about you instantly.
My mother warned me about boys like you. Mama said he's only interested in my Calvins.
Calvin Klein jeans.
Alf, I'm gonna split my Calvins. Settle the arguments. I'll be the breadwinner. I don't care who wears the pants in the family, just so long as I wear the Calvins.
So, when those ads aired, they caused quite the stir. A lot of people, especially today, because it was 45 years ago, don't remember what a sex symbol Brooke Shields really was. She starred in a movie that Louis Malle directed called Pretty Baby, which dealt with prostitution, and that happened. She was in that, very controversial. She was a very controversial figure. She was, of course, in the Blue Lagoon. And if you guys haven't seen the Blue Lagoon, back in those days, movies about young sexuality, Judy Blume's novel Forever, all of these things were very scandalous, and they caused a lot of consternation amongst the cultural watchdogs of the era. The difference is, back then everybody had a sense of humor as well. Look, that's not to say that there weren't a lot of people that bitched and moaned and complained, but we now live in a world where when a girl turns 18, she can start an OnlyFans account and completely commodify her own sexuality and her own body, and then make Instagram videos complaining about why men don't want to date her. And we now live in a time where everyone takes themselves, I think, way too seriously. I've always thought that humor and science fiction, for instance, have something in common, in that they are both comedy and science fiction and fantasy and horror are genres that reflect back on society. They have things to say about us, but they are removed from, say, a drama by either a lens of satire or farce, or in terms of science fiction, the fantastical. One of the reasons that Gene Roddenberry was able to do Star Trek the way he did it, and one of the reasons he wanted to do Star Trek, was because he could tell stories, or Rod Serling on The Twilight Zone, they could both tell stories in a science fiction context that they couldn't tell in as a regular drama on TV, because network standards and practices wouldn't let him do it. And I feel that right now what's very interesting is that we live in a time, and the same, by the way, is true of comedy. A lot of times, you had great satirists. I'm a big fan of Paddy Chayefsky's writing. Of course, he wrote things like Network, and I believe he wrote Altered States, but Ken Russell changed it. But, Mark Twain was a great satirist in his day. And even Shakespeare wrote some really amazing comedies and was terrific with satire. And the thing about satire is, again, you can remove yourself from appearing as if you're directly attacking people through humor. Unfortunately, today, especially many young people today, don't have much of a sense of humor. Everybody's taking themselves and their situations way too seriously. And, of course, the Sydney Sweeney American Eagle jeans ads have been something people have been talking about online the last couple of days. I was made aware of this controversy, and it's not that big of a controversy, but the fact that it's a controversy at all. On one hand, I don't see anyone, in terms of people protesting women's rights, you don't see people going out and protesting, say, OnlyFans or the proliferation of porn. That's empowerment. But Sydney Sweeney, who's doing obviously a play on words, suddenly becomes this nefarious. You're bringing back the idea of eugenics, both in early America, not early America, but late 18th or the late 19th and early 20th century. A lot of people talked about there were eugenics programs. They talked about eugenics, and of course, obviously during World War II and what the National Socialists wanted to do in Germany, breeding the Übermensch, the master race. But the fact that TV commercials or online commercials for jeans, which are obviously meant to be humorous, that some people, a lot of women actually, are trying to portray them as dog whistles for white supremacy. If there's ever a more apt example of where we are at as a culture, that to me, people are so desperate to, everybody wants to be a performance activist so they can, I get it. Finding meaning in life is difficult. And by taking up a cause online, you get instant gratification. You don't really have to work very hard. You just have to come down on one side of an issue that the people that you want to praise you will give you all the likes and love you want. And to me, it's really empty, because what are you left with at the end of the day? Nothing. You get some satisfaction momentarily online, but What are you really saying? But the controversy itself is not, I could care less, but I find the fervor over these ads where people are bending over backwards to inject, there's nefarious purpose. There's tons of things going on in the world that are horrible, that really require your attention more so than this. However, those kinds of things also require a little bit of effort to become educated about, to look into the history now. I mean, we live in such a, if somebody can jump on some kind of a cause and they don't even have to learn much about that cause, they can just jump right in and get all kinds of adulation online by coming out on what they believe is the right side of history. It's kind of silly, and in a way it's sad and pathetic. But even worse, where did our sense of humor go? You know, I find it ironic that this online fervor, which, by the way, next week no one will remember it, but comes out the same week as The Naked Gun with Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson is coming out. And in an interesting turn of events, the very fact that they cast Pam Anderson as the love interest for Liam Neeson in this movie, I think is a stroke of genius. But like, no one's paying attention and getting outraged by that, whether there's an age difference or Pam Anderson's history or Liam Neeson's history or any of those things. And I'm sure some people are going to be outraged by the kind of comedy they're going to experience in The Naked Gun, but I can't think of a better time for The Naked Gun to come out, because our civilization, especially here in America and here in the West, we have become deeply, deeply unfunny. And we seem to have collectively not only lost our minds, but lost our sense of humor. And we've also lost our way. We can't talk to each other. We can't have civil discourse with people that we might disagree with. You know, lots of people, I've found that if, say you need some help, I've said this before, but say you're outside at your house or your apartment and you're changing a tire or cleaning your car or maybe cleaning your gutters, it's been my experience that if somebody walks by that maybe is your neighbor that you haven't talked to that much, but if you're on a ladder, somebody might walk by and see you on a ladder and walk up and say, "Hey, you need a hand?" Doesn't matter what your political affiliations are. It doesn't matter what your religious differences might be. It doesn't matter if you're both different sexualities or you identify as different genders than you are. If you need help, I think most Americans, and I believe this, will stop and turn and go, "Hey, do you need some help?" I mean, maybe not in New York City, but even in New York City, I think most people's inclination is to help. But watching the fervor, the online fervor, and especially, you know, it makes me sad that I see more younger people online looking for whether you're arguing over a Superman movie or whether you're talking about the dog whistles, the white supremacy dog whistles that are in jeans ads. I feel sorry that people are actually expending energy thinking in this way when there's a lot of other more nefarious dog whistles to be found everywhere else. But anyway, I want to read an article that was published in The Atlantic. It's a long article, but it uses this controversy as a jumping off point. But I do think that it's a really interesting examination of, you know, and it's funny, I'm a big fan of The Atlantic. There's a lot of people that would say, "Well, Rob, you know, I don't appreciate the political slant in that magazine, so I don't read it." Look, I look and read at everything that I can, from all different sides of the political spectrum. You know, I remember during the pandemic when the intellectual dark web started to rise, where people like Jordan Peterson first came on the national stage, and I would watch him just because he was a professor from Canada, you know. And I remember people criticized me when I was first, and then I read his book, 12 Rules for Life, just to see what was going on. You know, pop culture is not just movies and music; it's also people that are on the world stage. These Calvin Klein ads from 45 years ago were very much part of the pop culture zeitgeist. There was a movie that came out. Man, I haven't seen this in a long time. I think it was a Warner Brothers movie. It starred Ryan O'Neal, and it was called So Fine. And in this movie, he's having an affair with like this woman who's actually married to Richard Kiel, Jaws from the James Bond movies, and he has to leave very quickly, and he's wearing her jeans and her like an Angora sweater as he escapes her house, and he tears his jeans so his butt cheeks are exposed. And I think his father is a clothing manufacturer or something, and people see him as he's trying to escape with his butt cheeks, and they make these jeans that have like they're open in the back so you can see people's butt cheeks. And it's a movie called So Fine. And it was the premise of jeans being something scandalous. I always thought was funny. And then the Calvin Klein ads. I don't remember when So Fine came out. I don't know if it was before or after the Calvin Klein ads, but it was funny. But anyway, the Sydney Sweeney fervor, such as it is, or any fervor that we've seen, I'm sure there's going to be people. I mean, people still talk about Tropic Thunder being some kind of an offensive film. Those people completely miss the point, and they need to pull the stick out of their assholes because they have lost their sense of humor, and they're not even understanding what the farcical, satiristic nature of what's going on in that movie is. I mean, people are like, "Oh, it's just blackface." What? You're not paying attention to what's actually going on. Tropic Thunder is a brilliant movie. It should be embraced by all, and anybody who doesn't get what's going on, you need to do a little bit more reading. You need to look at a little bit more comedy in your life. You need to go back and watch some of the Ealing comedies like or Kind Hearts and Coronets, or go back and watch the great Arsenic and Old Lace. You know, find your sense of humor, because you don't have any. And if you don't have any sense of humor, you are missing out in life. And here's the article I wanted to read. It's a long one, but and if you want to chime in, of course, this article is down in the description of this show. There's the tip link right there if you want to use the tip link and don't want to use Super Chats, or you want to use Super Chats. You don't have to use either one. I'm just saying if you want to, it's there. But you can find this article. It's from The Atlantic, if you'd like to, in the description of the show. And this article was written by Charlie Warzel, and it was published yesterday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. And the article is titled, "The Discourse is Broken. How did a jeans commercial with Sydney Sweeney come to this?" How did our entire society come to this? Sydney Sweeney is inexplicably reclining and also buttoning up her jeans. She's wearing a jacket with nothing underneath. She's attempting to sell some denim to women and appears to be writhing while doing so. In a breathy voice, the actor recites the following ad copy as the camera pans up her body. "Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. When the camera lands on her eyes, which are blue, she says, 'My genes are blue.'" The commercial is for American Eagle. The whole thing is a lot. The jeans play is a garden variety dad pun. But when uttered by Sweeney, a blonde, blue-eyed actor whose buxomness and comfort in her own skin seem to drive everyone just a little bit insane, it becomes something else. Sweeney does not speak much about her politics. For interested parties, there are potential clues, such as 2020 tweet supporting Black Lives Matter and a mention of having conservative relatives. By the way, Sydney Sweeney is smart. She's very smart. And she's taking her brand for all that it's worth. And I think she's a fine actress, whether she's a beleaguered nun or she's on Euphoria, or she's with Glenn Powell in Australia. It's smart that we don't know about her politics, because who really cares? But this hasn't stopped the right wing from framing her as one of their own. Her mere appearance in a plunging neckline on Saturday Night Live led the right-wing blogger Richard Hanania to declare that wokeness is dead. Meanwhile, speaking about the American Eagle ad in a TikTok post that's been liked more than 200,000 times, one influencer said, "It's literally giving Nazi propaganda." For some, The ad copy about parents and offspring sounded less like a dictionary entry and more like a 4chan post, either politically obtuse or outrightly nefarious. Across platforms, people expressed their frustration that Sydney Sweeney is advertising eugenics. One of the posters offered context for their alarm, arguing that historic fascist regimes have weaponized the feminine ideal, ultimately linking femininity to motherhood and reproduction. Another said that, in the current political climate, a fair-skinned white woman musing about passing down her traits is uncreative and unfunny. No. It is funny, and it is creative. To further complicate matters, before the controversy, American Eagle announced that a butterfly insignia on the jeans represented domestic violence awareness and that the company would donate 100% of profits from the Sydney gene to a nonprofit crisis text line. Are you tired? I'm tired. The trajectory of all this is well rehearsed at this point. Progressive posters register their genuine outrage. Reactionaries respond in kind by cataloging that outrage and using it to portray their ideological opponents as hysterical, overreactive, and out of touch. Then savvy content creators glom on to the trending discourse and surf the algorithmic waves on TikTok, X, and every other platform. Would I do that? Yet another faction emerges. People who agree politically with those who are outraged about Sydney Sweeney, but wish they would instead channel their anger toward actual Nazis. All the while, media outlets survey the landscape and attempt to round up those conversations into clickable content. Search Google's News tab for Sydney Sweeney, and you'll get the gist. Even this article, which presents individual posts as evidence of a broader outrage, unavoidably plays into the cycle. Although the Sweeney controversy is predictable, it also shows how the internet has completely disordered political and cultural discourse. Even that word, discourse, a shorthand for the way that a particular topic gets put through the internet's meat grinder, is a misnomer, because none of the participants is really talking to the others. Instead, every participant, be they bloggers, randos on X, or people leaving Instagram comments, are issuing statements, not unlike public figures. Each of these statements becomes fodder for somebody else's statement. People are not quite talking past one another, but clearly nobody is listening to anyone else. Our information ecosystem collects these statements, stripping them of their original context while adding on the context of everything else that is happening in the world. Political anxieties, cultural frustrations, fandoms, niche beefs between different posters, current events, celebrity gossip, beauty standards, rampant conspiracism. No post exists on an island. They're all surrounded and colored by an infinite array of content targeted to the tastes of individual social media users. What can start out as a legitimate grievance becomes something else altogether. An internet event, an attention spectacle. This is not a process for sense-making. It is a process for making people feel upset at scale. Unfortunately for us all, our institutions, politicians, influencers, celebrities, and corporations, virtually everyone with a smartphone, operate inside this ecosystem. It has changed the way people talk to and fight with one another. All as well as the way genes are marketed. Electoral politics, activism, getting people to stream your SoundCloud mixtape, all of it relies on attracting attention using online platforms. The Sweeney incident is useful because it allows us to see how all of these competing interests overlap to create a self-perpetuating controversy. Did American Eagle know what it was doing when it made this Sweeney advertisement? The company hasn't addressed the controversy, but the ad, not unlike the famous and controversial Brooke Shields Calvin Klein campaign, appears to be playing off of, seems like it was perhaps meant to walk a line, to be just controversial enough to garner some attention. Casting Sweeney to begin with supports this theory. Her image has been co-opted by the right, accurately or not, in part because of where she's from. The Mountain West, she's from Spokane, Washington, my home state. And some of her hobbies, fixing cars, even her figure, has become a cultural stand-in for the idea, pushed by conservative commentators, that Americans should be free to love boobs. Newsflash, everybody loves boobs. Girls love boobs as much as boys do. We all love boobs. Sweeney's cultural associations with conservatism have also been helped along by an Instagram post she made in 2022 featuring photos from a surprise hoedown party for her mother's 60th birthday. Online sleuths found separate photos depicting guests in MAGA-style hats and Blue Lives Matter gear, which led to a backlash. A marketing executive with enough awareness of Sweeney's image and the political and cultural conversation around her might have figured that an ad featuring her talking about her good genes would draw eyeballs. Which, by the way, that marketing executive should be given much kudos and probably a promotion, because look at American Eagle's stock price in the last 2 weeks. Job well done. This does not mean that some of the outrage isn't culturally significant. Those who have spoken out about the advertisement aren't doing so in a vacuum. Fears over eugenics creeping into mainstream culture are empirically grounded. Just glance at some aspects of the very public and loud proto-nationalist movements, which have been supported by influential people such as Elon Musk. Proud eugenicists have found purchase in mainstream culture on platforms such as X. The Trump administration is making white supremacist-coded posts on X and enacting cruel immigration policies complete with military-style ICE raids and imprisonment in a makeshift gulag in the Florida swamps. That's a real context that the ad was dropped into. It makes sense that, as one commentator noted, the ad might feel like it's part of an unbridled cultural shift toward whiteness. But all of this reality is stripped away by opportunists across the internet. The right-wing media ecosystem is excellent at cherry-picking examples that look to their audience like egregious examples of so-called snowflake behavior. MAGA influencers and Fox News primetime segments feed off this type of content, which allows their audience to feel morally superior. Very real concerns about the political direction of the country and the emboldening of bigots are reduced to Democrats are triggered by cleavage. The right-wing media apparatus has every incentive to go at the Sweeney stuff as the MAGA coalition struggles to distract its base from Donald Trump's Epstein Files debacle. But it's not only the right wing that cherry picks. In their rush to publish viral news stories explaining the controversy, the media credulously grab examples of supposed outrage, regardless of whether the accounts in question have tens of thousands of followers and actual influence, or just a handful. One BuzzFeed story quoted an Instagram comment from a user who is not a public figure, just a person with 119 followers. This kind of amplification, where non-public figures become stand-ins for public opinion, is a dangerous game. It distorts the conversation, sending a flood of attention to posts from small accounts, often in the form of other users who pile on and excoriate the original poster. In turn, this leads to the otherwise inconsequential post taking on the appearance of relevance, causing more outrage. What ends up happening in these scenarios is that everyone gets very mad, in a way that allows for a touch of moral superiority and is also good for creating online content. Here we are. The Sweeney ad, like any good piece of discourse, allows everyone to exploit a political and cultural moment for different ends. Some of it is well-intentioned, some of it is cynical. Almost all of it persists because there are deeper things going on that people actually want to fight about. The polarized discourse obscures the real possibility that the majority of people encountering this ad are uninvested, passive consumers. Rather than having any conviction at all about the entire affair, they're consuming the discourse the way that people consume sports content about player infighting in a locker room, or the way that people read celebrity gossip. Perhaps this is why American Eagle hasn't issued a panicked statement about the ad, or why its stock price, barring a small fluctuation, hasn't changed much. Well, it's changed a little. For some, the stakes are high. For others, this is content to be consumed in a moment of boredom. The internet loves Sydney Sweeney, not as one might love, say, a person, but as one might love an object, an atomic unit of content. By the way, Dr. Squatch, I believe, made soap out of Sydney Sweeney's bathwater, and apparently that soap sold out. Her image is fawned over, but also analyzed, co-opted, and monetized. She is savvy enough to get a piece of this action too, hence selling her bathwater and these jeans. But the internet loving you, it should be said, is not often a good thing. Its desire is limitless. It ingests a person and slowly turns them into a trend, a main character, a thing that people struggle to speak normally about. Perhaps the impulse to label these predictable culture war moments as discourse reflects a need to make all the anger and fighting mean something. Discourse suggests a process that feels productive, maybe even democratic. But there's nothing productive about the end result of our information environment. What we're consuming isn't discourse. It's algorithmic gist for the mills that power the platforms we've uploaded our conversations onto. The grist is made of all of our very real political and cultural anxieties ground down until they start to feel meaningless. The only thing that matters is that the machine keeps running. The wheel keeps turning, leaving everybody feeling like they've won and lost at the same time. I really love this article, and I wanted to share it because I think it really does a great job of distilling what all of these, let's face it, very meaningless controversies that develop, on a daily or weekly basis. And people seem to get invested, talk about them. It's all a great distraction. I'm more interested in the giant object that's entered our solar system that may be a comet, but could be something that's going to lead the way to disclosure. And maybe the fact that UAPs are real and there really is an alien civilization that helped build the pyramids, because now they're 5 miles down, and who knows what we're going to find out. I guess we'll have to wait until 2027. But either way, the internet remains an interesting place. And the discourse, well, it allows me to talk to you. Sometimes I get yelled at by Snyder bros who, last night, people were calling me a fat gatekeeper and a snowflake on my own comment section, which is also fun because it makes me realize, well, if that's what what people want to say to me, well, it's always very interesting. And I'll tell you one thing, I just like hearing all this stuff that people say because it just furthers more story ideas for the next project I want to be involved in. God, I'll tell you, we live in an interesting place, and if you ever need ideas to come up with stories, well, all you have to do is go online and see what people are outraged about. Go on TikTok for 5 minutes, and hey, you can come up with the next great horror movie or the next great comedy, because God forbid, God knows, we do need more comedies. So, does Sydney Sweeney even matter? Probably not. Does anybody really care? No. But it is something to pass the time, which is what most internet controversies are these days. So, what are you going to do? But, yeah, I figured I would bring that to your attention. Obviously, that article is about a lot more than Sydney Sweeney, which is why I wanted to share it, because I thought it was a pretty good article. So, I've got some letters to read, some from last night's Star Trek show. And, by the way, I am going to be doing a Star Trek. I'm going to the Star Trek convention in Vegas, and I will be talking about Free Enterprise. So anyway, let's see what you guys have to say. Kevin T. Rod says, he's been a member for 27 months, says, while I am by no means a fan of the president, these are the situations I think of when I tell people to give it half a second's thought when they wonder why Trump is popular. He's crazy, but so is this shit. Bathing App 891 says, I bet you don't have If Looks Could Kill on DVD. I do not. But you know what? I have something better. I worked on that movie. Yes, indeed. I worked on that movie. Bill Deere, I worked on that movie when I worked at Warner Brothers in feature production. Richard Grieco. So, hey, and now you asked what I did on it. I worked at Warner Brothers while we made that movie. Our department oversaw the physical production of that film. But it was interesting. You know, it was interesting to get the production reports and call sheets. That was a movie that I actually covered. It was one of my movies. So there you go. But I do not own it on disc. But I worked on it at Warner Brothers, at the studio itself. DBZZ Now, DeBiz Now says, I personally am mixed on the Sydney Sweeney ad. The arguments for it being a racist ad, are coming mostly from a well-intentioned place, but could just as well be a reach beyond the company's intent. Oh, I think it's a big reach. He goes on to say, if anything, it is the heightened discussions over race ever since Trump was first elected that caused this division in our culture. I would tend to agree with that. John Smith or Hater. The ugly people are always hating on Sydney Sweeney. Yeah, it's really interesting that there is something to be said for that. And yet, the people that are complaining about Sydney Sweeney, especially the women that are complaining about this, where are they screaming? Are they about things like OnlyFans, or if a woman has sex with 1,000 men in a day? Not a lot of outcry for that. Like, we live in very strange times. I haven't quite figured out what it all means yet. Maybe I never will. Sci-fi Extremist, I like that, says, I half joke, but do you ever wish Y2K worked and killed the internet? I would love the Sliders remote to just peek into that universe for a little bit. Nice Sliders reference. Now, don't worry. We're going to live through something with the rise of AI agents that's going to be far, far worse than Y2K was ever going to be. Wait till quantum computing goes online and smashes all kinds of encryption, and all your passwords cease to exist or cease to work, and our entire banking system comes tumbling down. But, yeah. But there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, a lot of stuff to read. A lot of stuff to experience. But you know what? May you live in interesting times. Our friend Darth Plato sends in a tip and says, in the 80s, my sister in high school was messing with a compact, and the home ec teacher says, put it away, you're no Brooke Shields. My sister replied, you're no Lassie. Detention. Again, we do need some humor. But I've got some good letters. Obviously, if you want to write a letter, you can write down there, write me a letter, put Robservations in the subject, and you can send it to me at rmburnett1701@gmail.com. The first letter that I want to read, comes to me from Chewy, 73. Rob Vallone, I believe, or Rob Vallone, but Rob Vallone. Hi, Rob. My name's Rob Vallone, and I'm a friend of Lael Rockwell, my compatriot from Midnight Musings, and I've streamed with him many times. I love Lael. I do his Sunday show, Collectors Lounge International. I go by the name Chewy's Bandolier. That is a great name, by the way. He's always saying great things about you, so I wanted to reach out. I really look forward to meeting you at some point, but until then, I just wanted to drop you a note and say thank you. I just watched your most recent video on the state of Star Trek, and in that 2 hours and 45 minutes, you articulated everything I've been feeling about the direction of Star Trek since 2009. I feel exactly as you do, and the way you spoke about it made me feel relieved that I'm not alone. So I just wanted to express my gratitude and hope that we'll be able to get together on a panel sooner rather than later. Until then, I will watch your videos with great enjoyment and hope that things will get better after the Skydance merger is finalized. Fingers crossed. Live long and prosper. Rob. Well, Rob, it's great to make your acquaintance, and I want to thank you for writing in. Very nice to hear from you. Let's stream soon. Let's get it Let's get it cooking. Let's get it happening. Yeah, a lot of response to that Star Trek stream. Look, you guys have heard it before. It's just, it's very difficult. I think it's hard for people to understand. I mean, Star Trek for me, while I was never a very religious person, I did get a pretty rigorous religious upbringing in that I went to Sunday school and I was bar mitzvahed. I had to learn Hebrew and I actually liked religious studies. But the thing about Star Trek was Star Trek instilled in me an interest in the world, an interest in the universe, an interest in people, in science, in girls, in concepts. And as I grew, Star Trek grew with me. And when people say, well, you nostalgia for your childhood, it wasn't really like that with Star Trek, because Star Trek, there was constantly new iterations of it as I was growing up. Even though Enterprise was a prequel series, it was trying to address the early Federation, and it wasn't. The real tragedy over Enterprise is that when Brandon Braga and Rick Berman created Enterprise, it was their idea that the first season was going to be entirely set on Earth. And Star Trek Enterprise, or just Enterprise, was the first Star Trek series where they had to deal with network notes. Star Trek was pretty much immune to that. The entirety of Next Generation, which was 178 episodes, Deep Space Nine, which was 170 episodes, and I think Voyager was it 178, 172? I don't remember. But those three shows, going from 1987 to basically 2001, 2002, that's a long time. And they were, for the better part of a decade and a half, Star Trek was made without any network interference. And Star Trek Enterprise, even though they were trying to tell, they had a very specific idea that the first year would all be about the politics, the geopolitics on Earth, and the idea of launching the first Warp 5 spacecraft, the fact that the Vulcans were keeping human technology down. And they really wanted to do a political show, a show not unlike The West Wing. But the network said, no, you have to put the ship in space immediately. So Enterprise from the get was a compromised vision, but I still think that by the time you get to the fourth season, the celebrated fourth season that Manny Coto took over, and rest in peace, by the way, and it took a turn to be the Star Trek show we all wanted, because it dealt specifically with canonically getting into and in a really thoughtful way, the beginnings of the Federation, unlike what Strange New Worlds and Discovery have done, where they have thrown off the shackles of canon and they want to have their cake and eat it too. That's another thing that I really can't stand about modern Star Trek. They are saying that, oh, no, we're in the same universe as the original series, yet whenever they can, they shit all over the original series and change canon. And there are groups of people that think, I know because I've seen their comments, well, it doesn't matter what you say, it's what the creators say that matters. Well, they weren't the creators of any of this. They inherited it, but they didn't create it. So the idea that they're going to go in and retroactively change what should be immutable. One of the things about Star Trek that's interesting is what I always loved about it was, while certain things didn't always jibe, they didn't jibe in the original series. When did the United Earth Space Probe Agency become the Federation? They didn't have all that. They were moving. They were as they went along, things changed and evolved. But for the most part, there was this idea that they were building a fictional history. And we all love that. Anybody who gets into these big tapestries, whether it's Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or the Zeeley sequence or the Known Space books that Larry Niven wrote, the Dune novels, we all love these expansive universes that you can really dig your intellect into. We all like that. Star Trek was the first thing that really did that on television. So did Doctor Who. Over the course of many, many years, created these big tapestries, and that universe, I remember getting B. Joe Trimble's Concordance and getting the Starfleet Technical Manual and all these, or all these things, and it all felt real. It made it all feel real. And then these creators of New Star Trek, because they don't know Star Trek, Alex Kurtzman admitted he never even watched an episode of Star Trek before he was hired to work on the script for Star Trek 09. He's not a Star Trek fan, so he's not attached to anything. So he doesn't even know. And to me, why would you hire somebody like that? And then they turn around and they go, this is an actual canonical Star Trek show, and you're like, wait, what? You're not getting anything right. No one can be bothered. I mean, people have been making fun. I found out, I watched the showrunner, Noga, is that her name? One of the showrunners of Starfleet Academy said that the female Jem'Hadar that we've seen is also a Klingon Jem'Hadar hybrid, and Paul Giamatti's character, like I said, is a Klingon Tellarite hybrid. Well, I guess somebody was watching the Sydney Sweeney ads and wanted to get into eugenics and is now mixing DNA of different races. I'm sure they're going to come out and do some heavy-handed allegory about all this, but the idea of doing some kind of an allegory about the Jem'Hadar doesn't really work, considering they're a manufactured species that were bred only for war. But anyway, 1001 Johnny, our friend 1001 Johnny, sends in a tip and says, Rob, I've been absent during your last shows. Snyder fans are being unpleasant. Yeah, I've been seeing that too. However, I've had a rude Donner fan come at me as well. Gun fans have also said unkind things about Snyder and his daughter's tragic passing. Yeah, I mean, look, man, I'm just happy to see a Superman movie. I loved George Reeves' Superman. I like Kirk Allen's Superman. I love Christopher Reeve's Superman. And I really love Henry Cavill as Superman. I don't know why anybody has some weird rivalry. It's so bizarre to me. I mean, it's just cool we're getting another Superman movie. It is bizarre. I don't understand 1001 Johnny. Everybody has to pick a side. Everybody's got like a faction they belong to. Where people are arguing over Superman movies. The rudest I've ever been spoken to online or the rudest things people have said to me online are people that are defending Zack Snyder's Superman movies. I'm like, bro, I own Man of Steel. I have the regular Blu-ray. I have the 3D Blu-ray, and I have the 4K. Like, do you? I have 4 different hot toys of Henry Cavill as Superman, and one day I'm to pick up the in-art Superman. Like, I don't know. Do I have to, like, where are my bona fides here? What do I have to do to prove that I'm a fan of these movies? Why are you coming at me? But I want to see James Gunn's Superman succeed as well. I don't understand why everybody doesn't want to see that happen. DBZZ now says, I do find it disappointing that the Sydney Sweeney ad is getting more attention than Donald Trump trying to get Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon in exchange for a confession that is almost certainly curated. Me too. I mean, you know, it's really interesting about the whole, like, rich dudes going after hot young girls. Now, I'm not talking about prepubescent girls. I'm talking about, like, hot teenage girls. You know, in the 1970s, rock stars who were probably way too old for the young girls that they were, the groupies, the Penny Lanes of the world, nobody said anything. But nowadays, people are like shocked. They're shocked, I'm telling you. You mean rich dudes are going after hot young teenage girls? What a shocker. Hello, you mean what's been going on in human history since the dawn of time? It's such a weird, we live in such a weird time where people's lack of understanding of history and lack of common sense have turned everybody into raving maniacs who are yapping about things that are, well, obvious. And, you know, Donald Trump, clearly, he has all kinds of videos. Or he bought a beauty pageant, for God's sake. And it's not like the girls who were in that beauty pageant were 30. If he'd just come out and say, yeah, I was rich. I availed myself of the benefits of being a rich man, being surrounded by youthful girls. I mean, it's so weird that like, what? Are you going to be surprised when somebody says, rich man has access to hot young girls, film at 11? Now, the question is, you're lying about it. Are you coercing them? That's the real question. But based on our world, you know what? 18-year-old girls, I can go pay right now and have 18-year-old girls do whatever I want. I mean, what world do we live in? By the way, I don't do that. I was always attracted to older women when I was 18 myself. So, older women, 18-year-old girls, what did they have to offer? When I was 18, when I was 22, I went out with a 30-year-old and a 40-year-old. And let me tell you, I don't regret that for a minute. And by the way, neither did they. That's true, by the way. I have another, but I'm an incel. I was called an incel yesterday. Okay. This one comes to us from Captain J.T. Kirk. Now, before I read this letter, I should say that Captain J.T. Kirk has been a member and a diligent a member of the channel, which I very much appreciate. And when we have member calls, we're going to have a member call coming up this Saturday, I hope. And what we do on these member calls is I just make myself available, anybody who's a member of the channel. We have these calls. They usually last somewhere between 3 to 5 hours for the most part. And I just hang out with the members who want to come and show up. And what I do is I basically give everybody so everybody can speak. And I don't take my entire life doing it. But everybody gets 7 minutes. 7 minutes in heaven. Just to talk. Tell me what's on your mind. You know, and the group listens. We have a discourse. We talk. And I opine if somebody wants to ask me questions or show something or talk about whatever you want to talk about, wherever you are. And people come in from all over the world. And it's really fun. Well, I noticed that Captain J.T. Kirk had been there a lot but hadn't said anything. Now, I didn't mean anything when I called him out. I was just like, hey, man, you're here. I'd love to see you. Because one of the things, I've had channel memberships now for years. And there have been people that used to come in all the time. And then, you know, when you're online, people come and go out of your life on your channel. Sometimes you might say something to piss them off, or you didn't give them the attention they wanted, or they just think you're a douchebag and they leave. So you as a YouTuber, especially somebody like myself who's putting myself out there and allowing access to me through letters or through these member chats, people don't explain to you why they come and go. And sometimes you like people and you wonder, like, oh, I wonder what happened to that guy, or I wonder what happened to that girl. I hope they're okay. You know, I mean, that's another thing. It's something I didn't anticipate when I got onto YouTube, is that I would really develop affection for not most people, but a lot of people. Not everybody, but for the most part, I like most people. So when people were coming to the channel and I got to meet, like, you'd hear about their kids, and their kids, you know, got jobs and they went and did something, and you could ask about them. Or somebody, you know, our friends that live across the planet, and you want to ask about their family or what's going on. It's always a fun time. But when they disappear, you know, they don't necessarily think to call you. So it can be kind of a strange thing. So Captain J.T. Kirk, I just mentioned, I said, hey, man, you know, you never... But I always forget that there are people who are shy. They don't want to show their face on camera, which is perfectly okay, too. You don't have to. You can just come in and listen. But this is a letter from Captain J.T. Kirk. Hello, Rob. I first want to say that I appreciate you for calling me out the other day for not talking on camera in the members-only chat on Zoom. I really did deserve that. Well, I don't think you deserved it. I just was curious. You're always there. I wanted to chat with you, see you, find out what's going on. I assure you that I'm not some creepy weirdo. I'm just a bit shy. Oh, I never thought you were a creepy weirdo. I don't think you would find me all that interesting. Well, see, that's where you're wrong, because every person has a story to tell, and I want to hear that story. I join Zoom calls sometimes because YouTube, for some reason, has brought on commercials during the live broadcast in the past, and I really can't stand that. The last member call you didn't do a YouTube members chat. It was just for the Zoom meeting, and I wanted to hear what you and other members had to say. I think you and the other members are pretty cool and have a lot of interesting things to say. I really enjoy listening to all of the shows that you do because of your personality, your opinions, and how you express yourself. You remind me a little of my best friend from high school who died from cancer 4 years ago. I'm sorry about that. I also listen to you on the John Campea show almost every day because it's fun. You're not negative, and you don't use that damn woke word that I truly hate and personally find offensive every 5 seconds like some other people on YouTube. I feel we have a lot in common, especially when it comes to Star Trek. Speaking of something Trek-related, this past May I was laid off from my job because of cutbacks due to Trump's stupid-ass big beautiful tariffs. After battling some minor depression, I decided in June now I had time and money, because I'm getting severance pay, to do what I've wanted to do for the past 9 years but kept putting off. I got a rental and drove with my son and girlfriend 8.5 hours from Cleveland, Ohio to Ticonderoga, New York to see the Star Trek Original Series set tour. Now, for those of you who don't know, James Cawley, the great James Cawley, or the crazy James Cawley, however you want to see that, James Cawley, who used to do a fan film, Star Trek New Voyages or Star Trek Phase 2, has built the most accurate recreation of the original Star Trek sets ever made. He basically has the entire layout that existed on the sound stages when they made Star Trek. He's got the bridge off to kind of one side, and then he's got corridors and the transporter room and Kirk's quarters and a briefing room. I have been there. I've actually shot on it. If you are at all interested, and now, by the way, they have the restoration of the original shuttlecraft there. And Ticonderoga, New York, is a historical place. It's beautiful. Upstate New York, really interesting. But I have to tell you, when you go there and you see that you can go on the bridge, you can sit in the captain's chair, you can see the sets all lit up. If you are a classic Star Trek fan, you can actually go down and be in the corridor, and you're entirely enveloped by the set. And when you go into the bridge, it's open on one side, but it's insane. It's insane. I mean, it and the way it's lit up, when it's all lit up, it's, I gotta say, there is something about it. And for the closest that I can, it's hard to explain what it was like to go there. But if you're a classic Star Trek fan, and if you grew up watching, if you are of a certain age like I am, and Star Trek meant so much to you, it really is like you step into a dream. And I don't mean to be hyperbolic about it. It really is. I mean, you want to cry. I know it's just a recreation of the sets. And by the way, it's probably a better recreation than the actual sets themselves. If you've ever been on a movie or television set, the sets can get kind of ramshackle. But, when you see what Colley's done with the bridge and how beautiful the transporter room, it's unbelievable. And there is only one other, I've never felt that way before. Because when you go to that set tour, and if you're a total Star Trek fanatic and you've watched every episode of Star Trek 100 times like I have, it's almost like this weird impossibility thing that you can't believe it's real. It's wild, man. And so Captain J. T. Kirk made the drive, and he goes on to say, it was a surreal and amazing experience. Walking in there, I truly felt I was walking into my TV set as a child. I wanted to touch everything so badly, but it was completely understandable that they don't allow that. They do thankfully allow us to take as many pictures as we like, so I definitely took advantage of that. When we finally got to the bridge at the end of the tour, I was the first to sit in the captain's chair and get my picture taken. I have to admit that I didn't want to get up. It was so amazingly comfortable to sit there and turn the chair from side to side. It made me think if I were rich, I would build my own bridge and make it my movie entertainment room. Laugh out loud. During the long drive back home, it gave me plenty of time to reflect on my experience at the set tour. The tour guide mentioned a few times that Anson Mount visited the set recently, which was nice, but all I kept thinking about after all was said and done was how much I truly hate Strange New Worlds and its sets compared to the original series. These sets on TV are very jarring to my senses. Unnecessary light bars all over the bridge. It's way too large with plenty of wasted space. Then there's that stupid-ass giant window on the bridge. It's all just overdone, in my opinion. It also doesn't make much sense. I'm not even going to start going into great detail about how this makes absolutely no sense canon-wise. I will just say it's as if you left your small but beautiful, gorgeous 3-bedroom home to go to work in the morning, and when you come back that evening, you find out there's a giant, ugly, overtly extravagant Vegas mansion in the same spot that your small, beautiful, gorgeous little home used to be in. To make matters worse, your family and neighbors act like nothing has changed at all. They think you're crazy and stupid for questioning anything. But you know that you're not crazy and stupid. This is original Star Trek sets compared to the modern. Look, I truly hate modern Star Trek with a passion from beyond hell. I cannot lie. But I'm not going to go on a huge rant about it, because I would be preaching to the choir on your behalf. That's okay, I'll rant for you. I'm just going to say that the original Star Trek was something that I would look forward to watching on Friday nights and Saturday evenings as a child. After a rough week of being bullied at school, it lifted me up and made me feel good at the end of every episode. Now, fast forward to today, with modern Trek shows like Strange New Worlds and such, they deeply depress me at the end of every single episode. They cut deeply, like a knife, into my soul. I can only describe this as how I felt when I was a teenager and someone raped my girlfriend at the time. Well, that got dark. I felt completely hopeless because I was not able to be there and prevent that abuse from happening. I know this may be a bad comparison, but it feels very similar to me emotionally. I can't prevent the abuse from happening to Star Trek. It's a helpless situation. Rob, you are my number one favorite person on YouTube. There are people who like Star Trek or may even like it a lot, but they're not in love with it. I've never met anyone in my life that has shared the same sincere, overwhelming passion that I have. Rob, both you and I are in love with the same woman, and her name is Star Trek. That is the number one reason I have kept coming back to listen to you for the past 7 years. I truly believe that we both park our shuttlecraft in the same shuttle bay. Your friend from another reality. You know what? You can't go wrong with a Balance of Terror reference. Your friend from another reality, Captain J.T. Kirk. First of all, I'm sorry to hear about what happened to your girlfriend. I had a similar experience. I was asked by a girl in high school, my sophomore year, my first year in high school, to help her get out of a situation where she was being horribly abused by her mother's boyfriend since she was 12 years old. Been going on for 4 years, and it wasn't great. So, but I want to thank you for sharing your experience, and thanks for writing in. And yes, I'm glad that you found the channel, and I'm glad that we can. It amazes me that when people write in, especially lately, the heartfelt nature of the letters that people are writing. People are really opening themselves up, and I have to say that the fact that you can write into the show and you feel comfortable sharing that much of yourself with me and with the viewers, it makes doing the channel worthwhile. I mean, yeah, I can opine about Sydney Sweeney or talk about rant and rave about Star Trek or Superman or whatever, but I feel that when people write in and share of themselves, you can't put a price on that. So thanks for writing in. I very much appreciate hearing from you. And we'll have a member call and pop on in this weekend. David Miller writes in. Old friend David Miller says, "Hello, Robert. I hope you're doing well. I also hope you aren't tired of talking about Star Trek, because here goes. I have a little saying when it comes. You know what? I'm going to take a little hit of my old fashioned Nob Hill old fashioned. You know what? They should sponsor this show. Can I get an alcohol sponsor? Because these are expensive. You don't have to pay me. Just send me these. Send them me by the case. So good. I have a little saying when it comes to TOS, Star Trek. Every episode can't be good, but there is something good in every episode. In that spirit, I'm going to list some episodes that are considered bad and mention what I think are its redeeming qualities. I'd just like to say that I define bad here as not enjoyable. That is, it fails at being entertaining. So, here goes. Season 1, Episode 6. Mudd's Women. We learn the weight of the Enterprise is 1 million gross tons. Season 1, Episode 27. The Alternative Factor. Features a high-ranking black woman engineer. Season 3, Episode 1. Spock's Brain. Remote-controlled Spock. First of all, you have the givers of pain and delight in that episode. Hot babes in miniskirts and go-go boots that have an ion-powered spaceship, and their technology allowed them to remove Spock's brain from his body. I mean, I want to meet those girls. I'm just saying. I'd like them to give me pain and delight. Season 3, Episode 4, And the Children Shall Lead. It's the first appearance of the Federation of Planets logo and flag. Yeah, that is the only thing. That is the worst episode of Star Trek ever. Season 3, Episode 10, Plato's Stepchildren. This is actually one of my personal faves due to the virtuoso acting of guest star Michael Dunn. And I know everyone will cite the historical first interracial kiss in this episode, but I also like Kirk's comments on acceptance and ableism in Roddenberry's world, and his quiet compassion toward Alexander. Season 3, Episode 12, The Empath. I rate this one as bad because even now it is confusing to me, but I love the scenes of our big three trying to sacrifice themselves for each other. You know, The Empath was an episode I didn't like as a kid, but I've grown to love it as an adult. Season 3, Episode 16, The Mark of Gideon. The scenes of the many heads staring at Kirk and O'Donnell are effectively creepy. I agree. Season 3, Episode 17, That Which Survives. An excellent special effect of Losira becoming two-dimensional and then shrinking down to a point. That was amazing and wild and surreal. And you would never get something... at the time, it was so simple. The effect was so simple, but so effective. Kudos to the sound effect that goes with that as well. Episode 18, Season 3, The Lights of Zatar. A love story for Scotty, where he doesn't come off as a pathetic puppy? Oh, come on, you know. Wolf in the Fold, I understand. Or, well, but yeah, that's pretty good. I'll go with that. Season 3, Episode 24, Turnabout Intruder. I actually refuse, that's the very last episode of Star Trek, of the original series. I actually refuse to call this a bad episode, but since so many believe it to be the worst, I guess I must address it. Fortunately, there are several good elements in this episode, and I'll list a couple. A hint at continuity as Lester Kirk mentions previous episodes to prove her identity. I love that. We see a bit of the Scotty of old as he stands up for what is right despite the danger. And best of all, Sulu and Chekhov's non-violent mutiny, showing that military personnel are obliged to do what's right and not just follow orders. I know this is a very subjective topic to discuss. One could say that all Trek episodes are good, but some are not as successful as others. I sometimes think the second pilot isn't as good as it could be because we don't have the actual triad of Bones, Kirk, and Spock yet. Sorry, Dr. Piper. So that's it. Except to say I recently rewatched Star Trek 4, and I'd like to convey my reaction to this film because I had a very powerful reaction watching it again 40 years later. But that's an email for another time. Take care. David Miller from David Miller Studios, Springfield, Virginia. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, look, one of the things I loved about Star Trek is even the worst episodes have something in them that are worthwhile. And, you know, unlike, say, this upcoming Star Trek episode where they showed clips from the third season where they all turn into Vulcans. They're turned into Vulcans through a ridiculous Deus Ex Machina that is ridiculous from its continuity, but it doesn't make any sense. But what they do with that premise, I don't believe it. It's stupid. And it shows a lack of thought. They're not even trying to make it. One of the things about Star Trek is, as silly as they made it, like the alternative factor is an episode that nobody likes from the first season. It's not a good episode. But there is a weird concept about these different universes, the Lazarus, the Lazari, and this room that they go in, and then the universe winking out. There was something vast about that. In the beginning of that episode as a kid, while I didn't love the episode, it's really weird. And it was thought-provoking as a kid because you're thinking to yourself, do I have a counterpart like that in an alternate universe? And if I met them, would we act this way? And so I would say people have always made fun of me because I like the alternative factor. It's not a good episode, but as a child, it really put the zap on my head. And it really was thought-provoking. And in that sense, I think it's certainly worthwhile. I'd say so. This next letter comes from Bob Coleman. Hey, Rob, I want to get your take on a topic lately that I've been quite fascinated by, and that is about filmmakers altering their work. More specifically, what is your take on grain removal from films that were shot in 35mm? I learned about this after reading how James Cameron released his 4K versions of True Lies, The Abyss, and Aliens. Apparently, Cameron has scrubbed all the grain from the image, recolor timing everything, lowering the contrast overall, and AI enhanced with motion smoothing and denoising everything because he likes the look. It seems his goal is to not accurately repress the best as possible the look of the film, or represent the best as possible look of the film when it was first released, but to make it look as good as Avatar. I love Aliens, but I don't believe that a film made in 1986 should try and look like it was made in 2025. I believe in film preservation, but that means preserving the films as they were, not trying to make them look as modern as possible. Spielberg once said that grain is alive. It's swimming. Even in a still life of a flower, that flower is alive even though it's not moving. Taking away grain from 35mm film is like taking a painting and trying to remove the brush strokes. Can you imagine taking the Mona Lisa and saying, hey, this AI tool we have can erase all the brush strokes? Purists would flip. Like the old adage says, it's because you can doesn't mean you should. I actually like celluloid films, and I like digital. The John Wick films are some of the most beautiful films I've even seen from a visual standpoint. Or the Aquaman films and all those Atlantis scenes. I don't know if it's a matter of preference on what a viewer likes or the filmmaker, but I don't believe in taking an old film and trying to make it look digital. I don't think that's a good thing. What are your thoughts? Thanks, Rob. And rock on. And that comes to us from Bob Coleman. Great question. I, too, think that it is important to preserve see, in our digital age, here's the funny thing. So, as our technology, when we had television, NTSC television and VHS was a terrible format. The resolution was awful. 640 by 480. I mean, you know, you're looking at the resolution we have now on 4K is light years beyond the resolution that we had on VHS. And the resolution of film, it varies depending on what kind of film stocks, but it's above 4K. 4K is about how we perceive the world. A little higher, but just for the sake of argument. It's kind of like a 50mm lens. A 50mm lens kind of recreates how human beings see the world. Not exactly, but it's close. Now, the thing about me, I think about movies as an art, and when you have, when you've created something, movies they're only 100 years old, and movies were always constrained by the technology that was available at the time. For instance, one of my favorite movies as a kid was the original Byron Haskin 1953 War of the Worlds. Still to this day, the Martian war machines, the design of those machines, the sound effects of those machines, some of the most malevolent motherfucking ships you've ever seen on screen, still terrifying, still works. But when the first Martian war machine came out of the gully, there was like 100 fishing lines or 100 white string or black string holding it up, which you could see. Now, when you're watching it at night, and film grain tended, because remember, film, you're seeing still photographs and it's photochemical, so there wasn't a perfect image. I mean, there's grain, there's emulsion and all that. That's what you're seeing. So that would hide a lot of things. It would hide a lot of wires that were used to suspend people. When they did the 4K version, they did a 4K restoration of War of the Worlds. They actually used CG, and they removed those wires. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that works because by seeing those wires, especially now in 4K, seeing a beautiful version of War of the Worlds, if the filmmakers could have at the time, they would have removed those wires. I'm sure everybody who ever looked at that movie wished they could take those wires out. It really does not fundamentally, I don't think necessarily that we need to preserve something like that. I mean, maybe some people, well, I like to see the wires, but no, because it literally affects the verisimilitude of the film. It really diminishes the film, especially when you're looking at it at such high resolution. So those things I don't have a problem with. My philosophy is you want to retain the look of the movie when it was made to the best of your ability, to try and offer the greatest vision of the filmmakers at the time. And that's kind of, I want to see films. I like grain. I like seeing it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of kids that if you're a 25-year-old and you came of age in a world where there was already CG movies like Toy Story, you've watched films that have been shot digitally, the John Wick movies, David Fincher has availed himself. I mean, you go back and you watch 7, he was resilvering things and playing around with film and emulsion even back then. But you watch his later films, and there is no grain. And there is a so a lot of younger people, a lot of people are still collecting physical or just got into collecting physical media now. They don't like film grain because they didn't go to theaters a lot when they saw prints being projected. And especially the last 25 years, you're watching DCPs, digital cinema packages. You're watching files. And if you go back and you see a revival of Raiders of the Lost Ark, you're not watching a print. You're watching a file. And a file is a whole different medium. When you're watching celluloid and light being projected through it, it's a whole different experience than if you're watching a DCP, which is digital, projected in a different way. The whole medium really is different. And you could get into the existential nature of all that. But I believe that film should be preserved to the best of our ability to retain how the movie was made at the time it was made. Now, there is George Lucas who came along, and I think the first time we ever had to deal with things where people were adding color to black and white movies. I thought that was ridiculous. And the idea behind it was people won't watch black and white movies, which is true, but if we make them color, well, then more people might watch older movies. And I would say it's not just the color or black and white that makes movies feel older. And I think preserving black and white movies as black and white is even more important because it's the progression of the art. And black and white, especially the whole genre of noir, came out of light and shadow. And when you see when I saw the Twilight Zone, I'd only ever seen NTSC versions of it. When I saw the CBS restoration of the series in HD, it was a revelation. It was amazing. A lot of people won't go back, especially young people, and watch black and white movies. Those people are dumb, and they're depriving themselves of so many great stories. But when we see filmmakers making fundamental alterations to movies, and the first and I think the most egregious of this is Star Wars. When I saw the Star Wars special edition in 1997 when it came out, I was appalled. I was appalled because I understand that George Lucas wasn't able, because of the technology and the limitations of the time, that he wasn't able to do things. So they did a lot of stuff. You go to Mos Eisley, but they fundamentally changed things. Mos Eisley in 1977 felt like a shithole East Texas truck stop where nobody was there, hardly. If there's a bright center to the universe, you're at the city that it's furthest from. Mos Eisley was the ass end of Tatooine, and that was already the ass end of the universe. But now when you saw the special edition, it's a thriving metropolis. There's Rontos and Jawas, and there's all kinds of droids flying through the air, and it diminished the story that was being told. It diminished the verisimilitude. I hated it. And then when you see the Jabba the Hutt that was rendered in 97, it was, first of all, seeing Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars ruins the reveal of Jabba the Hutt in Jedi, which, by the way, I have my own problems with. But it was really fun to see Jabba the Hutt for the first time because he's mentioned, when Han Solo talks about him in Empire Strikes Back, if I don't go pay Jabba the Hutt, I'm a dead man. Death Mark's not an easy thing to live with. I mean, all that was really interesting. But adding Jabba the Hutt and all that in Star Wars and changing Greedo firing first and all that, or Khan firing first, all that diminished the movie. And it was also haphazard. And when you put CG in a movie that was made in 1977 that had certain grain pattern, again, and then suddenly it pulled you right out of the movie. It's hard for me to watch those altered films. Now, you brought up James Cameron. I had a very interesting experience watching the new 4K version of Aliens. It flies in the face of everything that I believe in. But I would say this. James Cameron's movies, up through Terminator, before Terminator 2. If you look at Terminator, you look at Aliens in the Abyss. Because those movies that were, even The Abyss, was made on a budget. Aliens was a movie that was made for less than $20 million, and he only had 6 alien suits to make that movie. The scanning blue laser that comes into the Narcissus at the beginning of the movie that the salvage crew uses, Gail Ann Hurd, who was married to Cameron at the time, made Cameron pay for that out of pocket. She's like, we don't need that. He's like, no, I want it. And visually, it's very arresting. It's very cool, but Cameron had to pay for it on his own. The effects in Aliens are all over the place. The Skotak brothers, the optical printing, the film. There's a lot of, because of the film stocks they were using. The film grain is all over the place in the original theatrical version of Aliens. When I sat down and watched the 4K of Aliens, it's never looked that way. The whole movie looks different. But there's something about it, the overall uniformity of it, I dug it. Like the great Robert Harris, the film restorer. I mean, I know I'm watching something that flies in the face of everything I hold dear and believe in. But in that particular case, they nailed it. And using AI, like, look, I believe people are like, well, Rob, why don't we use AI and upscale Deep Space Nine? No, don't do that. Go back and use the original. I am a big staunch supporter of the original negative. I just got a movie I edited today that only existed on videotape. It only existed on NTSC videotape, Arcade, Full Moon's Arcade. First movie I ever have an editorial credit on. I've told the story about how Peter Billingsley and I broke that film apart and we started from scratch. I haven't watched it yet, but it's out on Blu-ray. And I'm like, how do they must have used AI to upscale the whole thing. I'm very curious to see what it looks like, because it was only 640 by 480. So who knows what it looked like. But the thing about Aliens is they were able to create a uniformity in that film when it never existed. It was hyper sharp, hyper stylized. And I got to say, I thought it worked. I mean, a lot of people have grown up watching shitty NTSC versions on cable, and they have some affinity for them. And all these classic movies, they haven't seen them, and people complain because of the way effects were done and optically printed. Like, you'll watch Close Encounters, or you'll watch Ghostbusters, or you'll watch a film that had lots of optical printing, many different layers of elements that they optically printed. So when you go to an effect shot, it's much grainier than the live action, and people have a problem with that. That's just a function of when the movie was made. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. As a matter of fact, the original series, Star Trek, the original series, when they put it on Blu-ray, when they restored TOS to HD, it was a problem. Because when you saw the opening credits, when you saw any of the effect shots, especially the space shots, they were optically printed, and they were way dirtier because you had multiple levels and resolutions, and there's dirt. And then compared to the live action, because they were all cut negative, beautiful. So the decision was made to do CG effects, which are to me, very hit and miss. Because, again, the money they use, the technology, the redone effects in the original series, some are good. Some I like, especially when they told something, they added to the storytelling, like where was the ion pod that got ejected from the Enterprise during the episode Court Martial. They did a lot of really cool stuff. Some of it I didn't like. I didn't like the new Romulan ship. I didn't like the new Fesarius. I didn't like the Doomsday Machine. But, it was hit and miss. But Paramount, because Paramount at the time, that was when they had smart people, and you had the Akutas and Paramount and CBS, I should say. CBS Home Entertainment. They put both versions on, so you have both versions of the film on disc. But look, True Lies, they were learning. I think The Abyss looks fantastic, and I think Aliens looks fantastic. But I understand where Cameron's coming from. But Aliens, True Lies does not look so good. And I would go back with True Lies. I would go back and do the original negative. But it's a really interesting and compelling. It is very compelling. And how are we going to do all that? So, again, my go-to position is always to try and preserve the film and make it look exactly like it did in the optimal conditions when the movie first came out. Those are the things that I totally believe in. But if not, if you've got like a filmmaker like Cameron who wants to make Aliens look like it looks, I'm all for that. 1001 Johnny has been a PGS Hero, a member for 26 months. And he says, also Ultraman, Rob, Sci-Fi TV. Yes, he loves his Ultraman. Darth Plato says, will we see a Tholian and species 8472 mix as well? God, you know what? I wouldn't put it past him. B Things says, I'm showing a friend TNG and I can explain how transporters and holodecks work to him, but only if I ignore post 2009. Yeah, because they threw all that out. What they did to the transporter in 2009 and Into Darkness, they made it essentially magic. The thing that, look, admittedly, the transporter in Star Trek, there was an interesting... Star Trek in its conception had an interesting dilemma. You have a ship that doesn't land. So you're going to different planets every week. How do you get, from a production standpoint, you're trying to make a TV show. How do you make a show where you have to figure out a way to get your crew down to the planet? If you're going to do model shots, that's a lot of work. And then you have to have different planets every week, and it has to land somewhere, so you've got a miniature, and then they had a full-size shuttlecraft. But they came up with an elegant solution, the transporter. You beam down. But in doing so, to make people believe in the transporter, like obviously there's a lot of existential concerns with a transporter. Do you die when you get transported? How does this all work? That's an ask. I've always said that fantasy and science fiction and horror, you get a big ask. One big ask. And in terms of the Enterprise technology, you can believe that it travels faster than light. But the transporter was a big ask. But they make you believe in it because it's governed by rules. The transporter's line of sight. You know, you can't, if you're in geosynchronous orbit above Australia, you can't beam somebody down to London. You know, it's a line of sight thing. You're literally, that's one of the limitations of the transporter. And that's what made it cool. That's what made it believable. Star Trek 09, you're beaming people across space and ships at warp. You can't, like ship-to-ship beaming was not something at warp. All of that was governed by rules, and it became story points and plot points. And the transporter was not some magical, it was defined by its limitations, and it made it believable. And then they took all those limitations away because they just didn't care. And the thing was, having those limitations made you come up with interesting story ideas. If there's an ion storm on the planet, you can't beam your crew up. You know, like in the Enemy Within in the first season where Kirk is split into two people, it's because they can't use the transporter because of the storm. And bad things happen, which is great. DBZZ now says, are you speaking Trump? As you were speaking, Trump is ranting on Truth Social. When you have such an unserious president, it breeds an unserious culture and society. I agree with you. You know, whether you're a Trump supporter or not, whether you're a Republican or Democrat or not, I think that throughout history, our leaders are supposed to have some kind of an element of, you know, you want to believe that they have a certain wisdom, are above you. I think Donald Trump doesn't have that at all, but that's why many people are fans of his. But when he's ranting on Truth Social, it makes him seem weak. When he gets mad at these things and what he's got going on, you know, with Jeffrey Epstein and all that, he should have just come out and flat out just said, yeah, you know, I'm a rich guy. I was able to indulge my appetites. And if he wasn't doing it against anyone's will. I mean, I know I work in Hollywood. I've gone to plenty of parties and I've seen people lining up of their own accord to try and hobnob with, and it's just like rock and roll. People forget, like, what, there was no groupie culture in the 70s? Have you not watched Almost Famous? Did you not read about Steven Tyler's history? I mean, when you were a rock and roll star, nobody cared. And a lot of the people that, you know, they were teenage girls. And people were having all kinds of relationships with teenage girls. If you're in your 20s, you could hook up with a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. If you're a rock star, nobody cared. And now we act like, oh, these are terrible things. It's all about whether you are coercing somebody against their will. And that's the real question here. Were these girls being trafficked? Obviously, that's horrible. And that's criminal. But now we live in an age where all of these things are being blurred. Like girls, you know, what I think is sad about OnlyFans is the commodification of the feminine form. What's going to happen when these girls that believe they're empowered are 30 and 40 and 50 years old and they find out that maybe they regret what they did? I mean, that's kind of sad. Maybe they won't. Maybe our society will change. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to be. But, you know, it's really all about people should have choice. And if you remove that choice from them, I mean, that's what America is all about. We have freedom here. And we also make sure that our freedoms are, as long as you're not encroaching on someone else's freedom. But I think that's a a true crime. And, people should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Silent Wraith 365 says, I'm from Spokane, where Sydney Sweeney is from, and so many people are calling us racist when they're the most genuine people there. Why must we stereotype and insult entire places in our own country? I have no idea. It's so weird to me. And that's my home state. People from the PNW, I found that the people that I like best in the world are from Washington. I get along with them. There's something about living in that area. It's so... Why are Americans nowadays so quick to demonize other Americans? Why? We're all living under the same Bill of Rights and the Constitution and all the things that make America great, and yet we've been conditioned, by the way, on purpose. We've been conditioned to hate one another. And that's why I say that on this channel, everyone is welcome. My only rule is that respect everybody while you're here. Fooish Shame Wiccan says R&B, the luminary of late night discourse. Marco. Is that Marco Escondolas? Warren 1765 says, if I ever own a rocket company that buys a media network that runs Paramount, I'll make you Star Trek czar. But you need to hire Ron Moore as an executive producer. I don't know if he'd want to come back and do Star Trek again. I don't know if I'd want him to. He's doing the God of War series, having just spent time with him. We really had a great conversation on Sunday, and he came and hung out with us for a couple hours and sat down and just with a few of us, and we were talking all things. He's such a smart, really nice guy. But he gave us Galactica, For All Mankind, one of my favorite science fiction shows ever, which I think in my head canon, it doesn't quite jive, but in my head canon, For All Mankind is the precursor to Star Trek. It really is. But I'll tell you one thing, I would definitely get a great writing staff. Sudoku 8244 says, Rob, did you get my letter about the Star Trek experience? Yes, I did. I just haven't got to it yet. There's still, just because I haven't read it yet doesn't mean I haven't got it. Six Scale Mafia says, Starfleet Academy is going to be the best Trek ever. Yes, Anthony, it will. I don't think so. But yeah, I know you're kidding, but terrible. It just doesn't look great. DBZZ now says, no disrespect to that writer, but comparing a fictional show to such a traumatic experience is beyond insane. Well, okay, here's the thing. I don't think, when you're thinking about, obviously the events that happen to other people are terrible. But I think that, in your own mind, whenever someone's powerless, there are degrees of that, and you try and make sense of the world. And if you love certain things, and I think people can, he was speaking about the things that he loved in his life, and you can love, like I love my dogs. And if something horrible happened to my dogs, that would be terrible. But, I love things, I love people, and I think it's more of an internal thing. It's not on the broader sense. I don't think the captain was trying to equate something. It was just, he was talking about how he was feeling powerless, and people can feel powerless in all aspects of their life. And I understand. I understand what he's saying. I understand that perhaps the comparison might not have been the best comparison, but I understand where he was coming from. I don't begrudge him. That. Me named Jeff says, another day closer to weapons. In response to the last time I wrote in, I have not seen the film, but I did some good summer reading, if you catch my drift. Yeah, I can't wait. When you've read a script and you see clips from the movie and it looks better than you thought it might, even when you had read it, that's kind of how I feel about what Weapons looks like. I can't wait. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Thomas Logan, 1624, says, thoughts on Doom's intro. Shackman confirms it was Robert Downey Jr. in costume. Brilliant to showcase Franklin is clearly not scared of Doom's facial scars which Chris Gore confirms he'll have throughout Doomsday. You know, I thought it was a little underwhelming. I mean, I thought it was underwhelming because here's something I feel about these post-credit scenes. Not all of the audience knows who Dr. Doom is. And I know they're saving the reveal of Robert Downey Jr.'s face until we see him in Doomsday, or maybe at the end of Spider-Man Brand New Day, which I think is a possibility. It just seemed a little slight to me. I wanted to see more of it. It works for us who already know what's going on, but I think there needed to be more. Like, what I would have found to be interesting, if I directed that scene, the one thing that I would have added is I would have had Sue Storm react, wait a minute, who are you? And I would have had Franklin move toward Dr. Doom. Like, Franklin, for whatever reason, is attracted to Doom. And I don't mean attracted, I mean attracted like to his power. There's something going on there. And Franklin's like, wow, this is interesting. Like, he's seeing something nobody else can see. And because he's an Omega level mutant, there's more going on. It just seemed a little, it didn't leave me with the feeling, it didn't leave me with much. But, yeah, it was cool. I would imagine that they shot it there because that Robert Downey Jr. would be there. But he didn't even move in a certain way, which I thought was, I wanted to see. I just wanted more of it. BCH2 says, Star Trek exists in For All Mankind. I think it works a little better as a precursor for The Expanse, especially with Mars. Yeah, I mean, no, yes, Star Trek is actually in For All Mankind, which they reference it often, which I understand. But I thought The Expanse, I don't know if it works as a better precursor to The Expanse. I mean, you could say that For All Mankind works as a prequel to anything. What I'm talking about is the messaging in For All Mankind. I think that it feels, the characters feel like Star Trek characters. As a matter of fact, For All Mankind is so much better written than modern Star Trek. It's another place I look at and go, well, you know, guys, there's real Star Trek writers. The reason you have jobs on Strange New Worlds and modern Star Trek is because somebody like Ron Moore created Battlestar Galactica and created For All Mankind and Outlander and all the things he worked on. Why aren't you watching those shows? Why are you ripping off Angel? It's so weird. It's such a bizarre, I don't get it. I really don't understand. And it's frustrating. I don't know. Well, this episode turned out to be a little bit longer and more fun than I thought it was going to be, mostly because of you guys. So I think I will end this episode. And, yeah, I can't believe it's almost July 31st. But anyway, I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank all you guys for generously supporting this channel via super chats and tips. I'm going to end our poll, and it stayed pretty much the same. So the poll is ended, and you know, you can see at the top how it went down. It sounded, I mean, 90% had no problem with it, 10% do. I think that says a lot, and I think that's pretty much where we were at. So there we go. Oh, I guess it 522 votes. And do you have a problem with Sweeney? And the answer, 89% said no. 89% said no. 10% said, what happened to the 1%? 1%, the people disappeared. Wow. Interesting. You guys are great. I'm very happy that that you Darth Plato says no, stream longer. Hit the like. I guess I could stream longer. I could go get more letters. No, I should. I gotta get up. I gotta go to bed. I gotta get up and go to John Campia's tomorrow. So, yeah. But I want to thank everybody for generously supporting the channel via super chats and tips. I am planning on having a member call Saturday, so if you're a member, yeah, we'll do that, and we'll start at 11. Dieter Bastian and I are back on Sunday, and it should be fun. So remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day, and thanks for being here. And Sydney Sweeney has great genes.